Ready and welcome. Had a late start to class today because of lots of techno effery regarding my Zoom connection. Thank you for your patience in allowing me to begin a little bit late. And today's class is level 2, lesson 12. It's called the I Am God Circuit. It's actually one of my favorite lessons, but it's actually one of the ones that I will rant most strongly against myself in that it is ripe for misinterpretation and cherry picking. And I want to make sure that it never gets taken out of context and never gets stolen, inverted, and weaponized against you. So some of the best parts of my teaching today, I highlighted them in my notes. Let me scroll, are about this. Your entire life as being analogous to the firing of one neural impulse moving across the synaptic gap within an enormous entity brain. All right. Also, this, and I'll go through this. This is just the overview for today. The idea that your whole entire exploration of this time vortex is again, setting of boundaries, determining who you are and who you are not. Key point also, this singularity point here, which is both your source and your destination for those of you who are going to complete this circuit and remember that you are God, or to phrase it correctly, quote unquote, I am God, right? That this wormhole over here, and I'll draw it out for you extensively in a whiteboard, is no longer characterized or viewed as death, but instead it is viewed and contextualized as a rejoining of yourself and having an opportunity to have even more consciousness. Just going through some of the most salient points, and then I'll get going on the full presentation. All right. What the definition of what it is to become an ascended master or achieve that central core timeline and return to connecting through the source, through that wormhole, is a paraphrase of looking at your life to say, if God were in a body, who would God be? If God were in my body, how would God be expressed through my body? And to live as a perfect conduit and exemplar of God, and to recognize the truth throughout your life, not only upon the moment of your death or your departure, that one is God. You are God, or I am God. And then also, we're going to talk about the booties, those pesky occupiers of the interstices. Hat tip to Pedro, of course, for coming up with our long-lived acronym that we use in this class. But those consciousness residues as being considered to be the emotional blockades and undigested emotional experiences or trauma, pain body of the galaxy and of the cosmos. And the parts that I will rant against in my teaching are the erroneous aspects of what I talked about regarding what to do with those booties. But basically what you want to do is to de-energize them. And what I talk about in my notes from 10 years ago is the concept of sending them into the sun, because when you go through the sun as a solar portal, it incinerates everything that is not the real you. And the rest of what is there, like the real you is eternal and remains, but the other stuff is incinerated or brought into a non-being state. So let's begin with that drawing. Oh, wait, I have to do this differently because they changed this whole Zoom program. In case you can't tell, I'm not a fan of Zoom and I'm not sure what's going on today, why I couldn't log in properly. Just not even dealing with it. It really perturbs me. I'm like, what the F? Like, this is not, it's not okay. Let's do things properly here. Okay. So here I am in the wonderful whiteboard, and what I want to do is draw a simplified human figure. You guys know I can really draw, but just not with these pens. Just pretend that I can really draw, okay? And then here's the sun up here. Just X out all this nonsense. Here's the sun up here. And the sun sends through solar energy. And let's say these aspects that are in light purple are the aspects of you that are conduits, like clear tubes that are in perfect alignment. This is just an analogy. You don't actually have structures that look like this, but we're just drawing like garden hoses, like clear conduits and tubes. And then let's also draw some poo caca. Let's find a like a caca. I don't really have a good one here. Okay, we'll use this. And we're just going to make those as like slanty, weird, not well arranged stuff. This is like detritus and junk. These are analogies for what's inside of you, not literalisms. But I was trying to figure out what is a good way for me to find a visual language that you can comprehend. So when you take a sun bath, a real sun bath, like when you are submerged in the sun and you are fully present in that experience of light flowing to you and through you. The light is information, it's time, possibilities, and probabilities, and it's awareness and a form of sustenance. And when you are aligned correctly, that sustenance comes through you, just do a thing, and it goes through these conduits perfectly. It goes through them with no friction, a state of total bliss. And what actually happens is you get faster because you're in perfect alignment with those S-shaped waveforms that are coming off of the sun, all right? But when the sun comes and meets and interacts with something like this, that is not in perfect alignment. What it does is it energizes it or de-energizes it to the point of incineration. So there's different, I just want to be really clear on this. You can think of it as making it speed up super fast to the point that it doesn't exist, or you can think of it as making it go super slow to the point that it doesn't exist. But the point is that stuff doesn't stay in you. When you get exposed to all of this sunlight, this stuff that is out of alignment gets unmade. This is just one pathway towards something becoming entropic. And then all that is or are left are these things that are the real aspects of you. So now I have to talk about what's going on in our world. That there are some people who are almost 100% this stuff. And I'm just going to make scribbles inside of them to show how much stuff that is in them is the stuff that is aberrant, stuff that should never exist. These are erroneous thought forms, erroneous concepts, worldviews, projections, perceptions, and interpretations of reality. And that is 100% of what they identify with. So identity has to do with your definition of self. How do you define self-state? Who is you versus who is not you? So this is different than simply saying, hey, this is my epidermis, it's the outer boundary of my body, and everything that's inside of me is me. Because most people are a mixture of both things. But what if a person has inside of them really only the stuff that is erroneous? They're 100% error and 0% truth. When they are exposed to the sun, then that becomes an erasure of their entirety of being. That becomes no more person because there was really nothing that was truthful in that person. And this speaks to what I was sharing with you last week about these fibers and these artificial crystalline structures that have been forming in humans over the past at least 3 or 4 years in the presence of the millimeter wave as it's been turned on. But really, there's precursors of those things beginning to inhabit human bodies for a long amount of time, like at least since 2012 or so, things that are sprayed in the atmosphere and assemble in people's bodies, to the point that some people have become almost 100% full of error, that there's almost 0% of their true cognitive self their true perception of mind and their true divinely connected organic self. Because that stuff on that, this is technology. We're not even at this moment talking about merely putis, which would be considered emotional residues that have plagued humanity for millennia and predate the current level of high technology in your world. We've also been inundated with this high technology that is exotic tech that has made some people that have a human somatic cellular body a house for erroneous information, house of lies. That's 100% of who and what is inside of them. And they identify with those lies as self. The journey of ascended mastery is the journey, and this is ascended mastery for yourself and the ascension process for the whole planet. It is the journey of determining boundaries, who you are and who you're not. What are your characteristics and what are not your characteristics? And these are aesthetic personal choices. Some people have made aesthetic and personal choices to completely non-identify with the eternal truthful aspect of self that would survive the presence of solar energy flowing through them, and to 100% identify with the stuff that's the trash, the stuff that's going to get incinerated, the stuff that is not long lasting and eternal. And that is an aspect of willpower. Instead of going into like choice, free will versus determination, it is an aspect of willpower, because we all have willpower, but not all of us are choosing to become 100% identified with an AI presence, a presence that is transmitted through these black, wiry artificial neurologies in the body, or information carrier system that is made out of false crystals. Not 100% of us have aligned with that at all. A segment of this population on this planet has aligned with that. And a segment of you have remained in alignment with who you really are, while being inundated by a lot of trash and crapola, which makes it very, very difficult, I should say, very, very difficult for you to move forward in your ascension process, where you should be able to not only be non-identifying with things that are technological and that are in assault on you, but then also going through your inner closets and going through your own state of being and your own characteristics and saying what fits, what doesn't fit. What are my real characteristics? Who am I really and who am I really not? Because that's the real journey of ascended mastery. It's like fine tuning a violin, where you did the major tuning, but then you've got these other little pegs that just move things in tiny little increments. And what you're doing is determining who you really are and who you're really not in terms of like your human structure. And what we're doing right now is just the grossest macroscopic tunings, where it's like, I'm not the Terminator. Like, I'm not a machine mind. I'm not an artificial intelligence. I'm definitely not any of those things. So like, okay, great. We can all agree on that. But then who are you in terms of your human spectrum? Who are you in terms of your human emotional truth? Not merely disidentifying or non-identifying with technology, but who are you on the emotional human level? Charlie B, thank you for being here. I squint. He says, for me, it would be a great kindness to erase any parts of me that are unfortunate distortions in conflict with my divine self, or which are distortions of my best heroic self. Well said. If it seems horrific to attempt continued existence with a non-true self, or to be continually dragged along by some external AI consciousness overriding my will. Absolutely. That is the real challenge and discomfort that we face. It's so well articulated what you just shared, that it is a horrific, and Allison is agreeing, really, really difficult burden. You're in a very burdensome situation where you're kind of like weighed down and diluted in your truest personality characteristics by things that are totally not you, and that would be artificial intelligence stuff. And then also, you know, it's not the real you to constantly be embattled either. And I experience this in my own persona here a lot. Like, I'm a very naturally joyous person, very free. I love to use my mind. I love to use my creativity. And what I've had to do over the past 3 or 4 years is spend almost 100% of my mental and creative energy just on fighting against this stuff. Just on fighting against these aberrations and technological implants that should not be in our world at all. And it has not given me enough time to be able to explore and establish my own identity, because I am much more than just the antithesis of crap. I am much more than just the cosmic toilet scrubbing brush that is constantly cleaning this stuff up. Luckily, I know myself. Luckily, I've had many, ascension opportunities earlier in my existence, and I had about 18 good years before they really turned on the millimeter wave around here, where I got to explore myself in this context. However, many of you have not had the opportunity to explore and define yourself in a pristine system. And for that, I am enraged and inflamed for you, because you never even got a chance to figure out who you are. And now this is horrible. I don't need to have someone talking to me on the phone right now. And I have my thing on Do Not Disturb, and they can go talk at different times. It's going to make noises. It's going to make stupid noises. I got to put it someplace where it's not going to make stupid noises. Just stop making stupid noises. Clearly, I mean, I'm just having a really, really difficult day with stupid technology right now. And I'll also say some of my difficulty, like I fight a lot of personal battles. The personal battles today have been against those levels of embodied humans who are here, that are in like military programs, intelligence programs, those who have really embraced the empowerments that come from being in alignment with AI and technology, who have shielded themselves from the repercussions of their actions by decrying, like, there wasn't a better option. It's not our fault. We had to. Like, the answer is no, they didn't have to. There actually were very many other options. And when it comes down to it, they made a choice in favor of pure malevolency and in favor of power abuse. And in many ways, hi, Mary, good to see you. This is the definition of who they are as people. That when you get past all these lies and excuses, most of these miscreants have a thick shield of lies and excuses to justify why they act the way they do. But when you get past all of that shielding, you get down to, this is a crap person. They've got crap values, crappy. They've got a very poor viewpoint of life and very poor levels of self-responsibility. And they use that in order to justify their continued existence through the elevation that technology can bring to them. But it is never justified, because it would be like saying, well, I know I'm the worst runner. I'm not as good and I'm not as fast and my feet don't work as well as all these other runners, but I'm going to put on magical, technological shoes that allow me to keep running in the race, because somehow I'm going to justify that I should still be in the race, instead of being like, something like 10,000 of these people are better runners than me. I'm not really supposed to be here. I should really train more before I even try to be in the race. They don't have that level of self-honesty or self-accountability. So they use technology as training wheels to augment their minds and also to empower themselves above others. What you all need to know is that when you get to levels of spiritual attainment, technology is an impediment to your empowerment. And you are much more powerful than those who are reliant upon or choose to use technology. You kick ass way harder without any technology than with technology. But what the low level, like weak ones, are trying to do is to make technology ubiquitous and inescapable, so that you don't have a choice or an opportunity to live in your free, unfettered state, empowered without technology, and that they can also control the technology to empower themselves and to disempower you. And that's pretty much what you've been experiencing. So a lot of the things that I talk about when I rant about from my class from 10 years ago, I do have, I think, a good, pristine concept teaching about what is ascended mastery and then what is the shadow self. But in this world, there's a thing that is called the techno inquisition. I named it the techno inquisition. We can do a lot of funny Monty Python skits. Nobody expects the techno inquisition, and it's true. Their main strong points are stealth, and they will poke you with the soft cushions. Watch that. I'm joking. Of course, I'm being very silly. And I have to be silly because it's actually a very distressing topic. It's a topic about being technologically tortured through electrocution, through the implantation of these artificial networks, as a way of eliciting behavioral control, and also as a way of aligning you with certain things, certain agendae and certain aspects of the regime. And in the techno inquisition, those who are in alignment with the AI and who are in alignment with its value system get elevated. And I already told you about in class last week the false light little specks, I guess you call them quantum dots, that have been lodging in the human body and especially in areas of human neurology. I drew that little picture of like the skull, the hippocampus, the eye areas, all of that, those dots are very much a part of techno inquisition, that when people are in alignment with the AI and they get more of those artificial crystals, more of those false lights, more of this stuff down here, like this stuff assembles this stuff. When they're in alignment with, they don't fight against the AI, they get full of this stuff. And it pretty much fills up all of their neurology. They become like what I drew in the beginning of this class. They become almost 100% full of the stuff that's going to get burned off, stuff that is non-eternal, stuff that is not actually their real self. And in this world of technology, it gives them a temporary, elevated empowerment within this non-pristine system. It makes it possible for them to receive more empowerment, more resources, and to do more. It also completely erases or negates or abdicates any level of their true divine connection and what we would call their true humanness. Like they are almost 100% no longer human in their alignment, like who they work for, who they're motivated by, who they're motivated to help, who they assist in the world. And they're almost 100% instead in alignment with technology, AI, and the machine mind, and everything that is the infrastructure of support for that level of technology. So they betray the natural organic realm, they betray the planet, they betray matter and time space itself, like the very features that sustain consciousness, and certainly betray you as humans, as other members of its supposed species, in order to align with something that is totally non-human, because it gives them a temporary reprieve or a temporary empowerment. But there is not a way to maintain that empowerment when you're faced with the true energy of the sun flowing through. When I talk about shadow self from 10 years ago, so my teaching from 10 years ago is a beautiful, valid teaching that is about what happens in the physical world when you create an embodiment object. So if you have light coming from the sun over here and it travels and travels and travels, and then it coalesces as matter over here, it doesn't keep journeying onward on its infinite journey. It coalesces and slows down as matter. And all of our matter that we have, all of our physicality is really slowed down light, which is pretty wonderful and pretty miraculous. But then what it means is that there's an area of non-existence where that light does not exist because it is busy existing in a concentrated state, in a slower state here as matter. And I use that as a literal analogy in my class from 10 years ago, talking about ascended mastery, that those are the culminations and peak levels of refinement of characters and characteristics in your world, and that represents a coalescing of energy where then there is the shadow self, or the area where the energy does not flow. And as having the ascended masters as having a responsibility to their shadow self, or the areas that have not been fully raised to illumination and recognition and enlightenment and self-knowledge, and that they must take responsibility for that. And this, like, just if you take that teaching, head's going to explode, because you're not going to be able to apply that teaching effectively to the world of profound distortions that are created by this. This is why I have to speak and articulate this so carefully, because this stuff, techno inquisition, is run by an imposter that pretends to be like a type of Jesus figure and is totally not the real Christ, is totally not even the real Jesus teacher from 2000 years ago, and is 100% an imposter who justifies torture, justifies torment, justifies creating suffering, and then like an arsonist who then shows up as the firefighter comes along to save the day. It says, I see you're in suffering. Now I'll fix you up. Come be a part of my fake heaven. So this is an important thing for me to be able to tell you about. Those false lights that lodge within people, they're the elevated ones within their system. They go to a place that is a fake heaven. So everyone else here is being forced and persecuted into a technological hell. The hell is not the traditional metaphysical hell like Dante's Inferno. It is an allegorical, technological fictionalization that is flavored by your human neurology because it is created by a nanotechnology type of race or species that, like the large language model, it scans and scrubs from your most important texts and narratives, and then it works those into the narrative that it is presenting to you as a false reality. So it will scan all of human literature and it will say, what are the buttons to push? What speaks to humanity most deeply? The Bible. I'm going to use allegory and imagery and metaphors that allude to the Bible, and also other aspects like Dante's Inferno. It's in the high school reading list that most people know about. So if you scan everybody's mind, be like, yeah, 55% of humanity knows about Dante's Inferno, and it creates a worldview. So we're also going to put in some of that into the technological infrastructure that is really a gamification of the process of ascension. Because as I spoke about last week, what you're supposed to do in ascension, and what this ascended mastery that I'll tell you about in pristine language, is a reconnection to your true divine nature through the sun. And in doing so, you don't have an intermediary to divinity, and you receive all the information that you need directly. So you don't need like a priest or an oracle or someone who gets that information and sends it to you. You connect directly. But that's very, very different than the technological system that you're in right now, where the natural sun has been blocked out. And it's been not possible for you to connect your inner architecture directly to the true divine mind and the true divine sun. And instead, what you've got is energetic cannibalism, where in this locked down, limited terrarium-like system, all of the inhabitants are fighting for the energetic resources, and the energetic resources are limited. And the guys that have a lot of those false crystals in their hippocampus and in their forebrain and in areas of their language centers, they're the ones cannibalizing other people. They're the ones that are taking the chi or the life force or the life-sustaining energy off of others and diminishing your inner architecture so that they can feel artificially elevated. So it's absolutely an artificial system. In the real system, it is not the game of musical chairs. In the real system, everybody has a chair where everybody has a divine connection, and there's plenty to go around. You are being limited. So that means you're not gaining the real access to divine connection. And instead, what's happening is in that limited environment or ecosystem, some participants are being favored over others, artificially empowered. And these are the psychopaths. These are not the good people. These are not the goodest of good people. In a real system, the good are rewarded. The goodest of good people have the most energy, but you're not in that system. You're in a totally artificially engineered system that is artificially engineered by these guys, by this infrastructure, and by the people that make this infrastructure. Because this infrastructure didn't just make itself. That is what I say all the time. I say to myself, those towers just didn't erect themselves. This stuff just didn't spray itself in the air. These agendae that are part of what's in our world isn't just promulgated by invaders. Some of it is perpetrated upon you by members of your own species that have been completely subsumed by this invader mindset and invader technology. And those are the guys that are getting high off of your stash. Those are the guys that are literally energy vampiring off of you and getting all of your chi and life force energy and ascension energy, and they are using it to elevate themselves into levels of consciousness that feel more fun, expansive, and elevated. Elevated, I said that twice. And then to keep you suppressed into a feeling of depression, hopelessness, and suffering, that this is the artificial hell that we're talking about. So you would not be in this circumstance. This is not something that is created by God. This is not a hell that is, or a hell or punishment reward system scenario that is part of the metaphysical world. It is 100% a technologically created augmented reality that is being plastered over or projected upon true reality. And everyone who's here right now on this planet, including dogs and cats and squirrels, are being required to participate in this very, very unfair gamification of energy, because energy is being drawn off of squirrels. My shoulders go down. So the energy is even being drawn off of squirrels. They can't just even run around and play in trees, collect their nuts. That is horrible. That is horrible. And it's not the way it's supposed to be. So even nature and wild animals are affected and afflicted by this. And the artificial heaven of their world is populated by not good people. Regular heaven in your metaphysical world is supposed to be the place where good people go. And that is why this is such a powerful way of co-opting your literature, like Dante's Inferno and the human Bible, about the concept of being good enough and going to an afterlife heaven. But this is instead an augmented reality heaven that is populated not by the very best people, but by the very worst. Those who are the most in alignment with the AI, who open themselves the most to neurological interference and inhabitation by this stuff, and who are willing to feed upon the energy of their fellow humans who are being held captive here, to the point of creating misery and a hellish experience for their other people. Because in order for one group to be held up and to be elevated, the other group has to be pushed down. And if these guys start to come up, it means that these guys are going to get pulled down. All right. And none of that is a natural metaphysical context. All of that is an artificial, technologically created circumstance or situation. That is what I call the techno inquisition. And so you have this false heaven of the techno inquisition that is inhabited by the biggest psychopaths, not the biggest ascended masters. That's where heaven in real life, in non-technological life, heaven is supposed to be inhabited, a paradise state, by ascended masters, the people who did the right thing, who cultivated themselves through life, had their moment of realization, the I am God moment, and made it home through the wormhole. They are the ones who are the embodiment and exemplars of what it is to live as God, the divine presence in the world. And in the Techno Inquisition, the guys that are in fake heaven are the complete opposite of everything I just described. They are false ascended masters. They have done everything that is the opposite. They have harmed their fellow humans instead of uplifting them. They have created suffering instead of created healing. They have served themselves at others' expense. They have participated in aberrant technological system and agenda run by an AI that is completely insane and completely destructive to the world for their own purposes of their own comfort. They're like, as long as I get to eat steak in the Matrix, I'm going to be happy. Just give me a nice, comfy, cushy zone in fake heaven. And I don't care if it hurts other people. And I don't care if the AI destroys the world. Just let me eat steak in the Matrix. That's them as fake ascended masters. And they are also kind of trapped in that area where they are too. I'll get to your comment in a little while because I want to keep going on my flow. They're kind of trapped because in order to make it to those elevated levels of fake heaven, they also have to become neutered and defanged. They have to become the house pet of evil. They cannot go up there with their full genetic quotient, with all of the feral aspects of their DNA, including the capacity to do proofreading, connect to the morphogenetic field, and to fight back effectively. Because when you become an ascended master and you activate your highest faculties, like you also are a BAMF. You're good ass, ASS. You're a very effective fighter, and you fight with total intensity and total integrity for the side of righteousness. You're not a vanilla milkshake who is passive, limp, and inactive and unable to do things. So if you look at the New Age world, it is largely populated by this misassertion that like there's tons of angelic presences and all these ascended masters that are all gathered around you, and they call you like the beloved and the dear ones. Oh, dear ones, another transmission for your Sunday morning. And then they're always like, we'd love to help you, but we just can't because of blah, blah, blah. Okay, go back to being tortured now. Bye-bye. And that is not what ascended masters do. Ascended masters would be like, hi, here's telepathic phone call from ascended masters. Hi, like you're getting your ASS kicked by evil down there. Everything is not okay. You need to do this, this, and this. I'm going to do this, this, and this. You're not alone, and we're going to help you and actually do something. And let's do it now. And let's mobilize now. That's what real ascended masters are trying to do. So you have to comprehend that your phone call to real ascended masters has been like blocked out. You're not getting the real deal, getting tons of erroneous transmissions, and that ascended masters would never stand by like damsels being like, we wish that we could help you more. I clutch my pearls. I'm so upset. Let me go eat another interdimensional strawberry while you're suffering down there. Like, no, we don't do that. We actually do something about it. That you've been lied to a lot. And that also these fake ascended masters that are in the fake heaven of the very real techno inquisition are disempowered, that they are really in a type of imprisonment themselves, but you can't look at them as damsels because they'll portray themselves as damsels. They'll be like, I can't help you. I'd love to, but I'm stuck here and trapped myself and my limitations and my this and my that. It's just like you have to understand, like you're actually talking to something that is very evil and that has given up its claws and its fangs to eat steak in the Matrix. That's, if you don't know my references, it's a movie from a long time ago, and there was one character named Cypher who knew that the Matrix was fake, betrayed his friends, and he's about to eat a nice steak. And he's like, as long as I have a cushy gig, I will sell out everyone who's important to me. Just let me eat this steak, because he did not effing care. That's who these guys are. They're really the antithesis of any of the real characteristics of what ascended masters are. So this is not just a question of ascended masters in a pristine system that is of genuine consciousness having to recognize their peripheral selves of who they were on the journey towards perfection. Because theoretically, even your history's greatest madman like Adolf Hitler, he was a peripheral life. What do I mean by this? So first I'm gonna, he was not the ascended master life, to finish that sentence and give you closure. He was a peripheral life, not the ascended master presence, but that there would have been a potential for ascended mastery within him, as there is the potential for ascended mastery within all of us. So first, in this three-dimensional sculpture, I will call your attention to the lower quadrant, this lower vortex over here. And now I'm going to draw that for you, but you know that this is actually a three-dimensional shape. Let's draw the short-handed cross section for us to be able to begin really talking about this. Oh, I keep on pressing the wrong buttons. Sorry. Bear with me. I squint, I scroll, I make very funny faces. Where's the whiteboard? There's the thing. Where is it? I'll get it, guys, I promise. Anyway. Let's take the moment. Okay, so now let's draw the cross section of what I just showed to you. This line over here is year 0. That is your birth. And time marches in this direction. And every single one of these timelines that I'm drawing over here are possible versions or stories of reality. I want to use a better color because you can't really see on your screen. I'm trying to make this a purple color, all right? So this path is the path of least likelihood, and it goes to infinity. That is a wormhole. that is over here. This is like an aperture or a wormhole. And it's actually so skinny that only one timeline actually can get through that wormhole. All of the rest of these timelines, they terminate on the membrane of death. And the membrane of death has become populated by the putis, the interstices, the pesky occupiers of the interstices. The interstices is supposed to be clear. It's supposed to be a perfectly clear conduit between worlds. And instead, for all of recorded human history, it has been burdened with, let's get some doo-doo color here. Here's some doo-doos, some pooties over there, and some pooties over there. And before you jump out a window, yes, they live inside of you. They live inside of your own chakra system. It's good news and it's bad news. It's good news because it means you will be able to effectively clear them out of you. It's bad news because you have to effectively clear them out of you. Key point is they don't live in some far off distant realm. They live in the interstices and the hell realm, what's become a hell realm, which actually exists inside of you. But it's not supposed to be a hell realm. It is supposed to be an area of transit between worlds, okay? To be an ascended master, it means that your consciousness has culminated to this place as your starting point and has begun moving upward along this beautiful timeline and is ready to go through this wormhole, which is analogous to going through the sun. I have traveled through the sun, and so I know what this experience is. I have traveled through the sun in different levels of my existence and my experience, and I know that this portal or this wormhole is not a place of death, but is a place of redefinition of self. That is where everything that is in perfect alignment, like for this drawing, everything that's perfect to facing up and down like this stays with you. Those are your eternal aspects of self. But that everything that is slanty or diagonal and not in the right alignment cannot come with you through that doorway. It cannot fit through that doorway. And some of those quotients are belief systems, characteristics, behaviors, and other things that are within your choice, that are the direct result of what you've chosen and how you've chosen to act and behave and define yourself in life. So one example would be, someone like Hitler, history's greatest madman. He would be over here and he would be at an angle, not in perfect alignment to go through that wormhole. But the idea is that after circulating through all of these other possible permutations of life, like this ended in death, and this ended in death, and this ended in death, like Groundhog's Day is going to go through every single one of these wrong notes. But then eventually his soul would become refined to the point where he would begin at this level over here and then move through these series of events in life, knowing that he's God, and then make it to this moment over here, which is the I am God moment. But all of that is predicated upon the presumption that you will have that many quarters in the arcade to play that many video games. All right. Now, life is not a video game. We're serious. We take life seriously, and it's not a sociopathically disassociated thing where you say, like, it's just a video game. Who cares about all that death and suffering? No, it is a very, very real place, but I use as the analogy the sense of going to the video game arcade, which you might have done, I don't know if you were a kid, something like that, and you got quarters from your mom, and you were able to play games like Pac-Man and Frogger. And you're like, oh, just one more quarter in the machine, and then I'll clearly figure out how to get a high score, right? Because this going up here, that would be considered like your high score, getting your name on the board. The winner's board. But you have to keep on trying. And it's highly presumptive to think that you're going to have an infinite number of quarters. Maybe your mom gave you $5. And then when you're done, and you don't have any more opportunities. And also maybe the arcade is going to close down at whatever, 8 p.m. And your mom's going to come and pick you up. And you don't have the opportunity to endlessly cycle through all of these possible wrong notes to be able to get to here to then play the symphony correctly. It's a huge presumption to think like, yeah, sure, like I'll just waste all of my time, be a big giant a-hole, kill a lot of people, create a lot of suffering. I'm sure I'll get another chance to do it all over again and one day perfect myself. That is a hugely erroneous presumption that is not borne out by reality. So although it is truthful that this time structure exists within each one of us, and that each one of us innately has the potential of that purple timeline to be an ascended master. Not 100% of us end up having, quote unquote, enough quarters to play the video game to be actually have the opportunity to explore that. There is actually such a thing as like abusing the system or harming the system or trying to hack the system. And at a certain point, the arcade closes. Sorry, kid, go home. You don't get any more chances. And that's the whole point that I'll just go back to my face while I talk about this a little bit. Some of these very, very benighted consciousnesses think like, chances, schmances. I'm just going to keep on effing things up and do my math homework wrong. Like at least that guy in the movie Groundhog's Day, Bill Murray's character, at a certain point, like he went through existential nihilism and tried to destroy himself. But then at a certain point, he genuinely tried to improve and get better. And people that I'm talking about, or organisms that I'm talking about, levels of consciousness, they are not trying to get better. How did they become the Pooties in the first place? They did that on purpose. They did not actually accidentally end up through a series of, harmful accidents, miscalculations, like, oop, like now I'm smeared on the membrane of death. What do I do? They did it on purpose. You get it? Like they smashed their guitar on stage. They put themselves in that placement in reality structure, thinking that it will give them a type of eternal or at least extremely prolonged existence. Totally not caring about the destabilization and perturbations that would happen as a direct result of that on all of you, on all of us. And not only stabilizing all of us, but then to have to compensate for their tortured semi-existence through feeding off of all of us. So it would be bad enough if they just existed as unresolved consciousnesses on the membrane of death, destabilizing us and destabilizing the fabric of time-space. But then also, they also feed off of you during your life and even distort and torture your soul's journey and your progress upon death. These are three very bad things that are all not acceptable. And they're doing them all on purpose, all right? So again, just to reiterate, you have several different levels of badness or wrongness. The ancient stuff, which are these Puti consciousness residues that have been there for a long time, and they have been diminishing the consciousness unfoldment and evolution process in humanity for a long time. Then you also have the more modern technological stuff that within that context of diminishing your soul's evolution is aiming to diminish your ascension experience even further in this moment through using technology. So wait, I'm going to pull up my notes. I'm totally nonlinear, but let me get to this question from Meech first. Says, a channeler friend, okay, and so let's go to the meeting. A channeler friend I follow, I used to follow, has recently come out against all the things he did, said, taught, saying everything is a program except one's own true inner self. He advocates for only connecting to your true self outside of polarity and to skip even God. What do you think? I can't speak to this channeler or their personal trajectory of consciousness or what they are experiencing. Although I certainly hope that they're like continually refocusing their message and finding the truth within. But I would say the best advice in terms of like how to navigate the system is to 100% go for focusing on your own innate divine connection and to avoid the pitfalls of structured belief systems and basically everything that has been codified or created as a recipe or as a structure, because all of those things like religions, philosophies, even more modern, new age philosophies or cults, they're not going to be relevant to what is going on right now because this is unprecedented. Like this stuff is the stuff that you have to really conquer in order to do your ascension here now. And it's a new thing and it's an innovation. And every time they spray wet lines in the sky, it's an innovation that you're going to have to respond to. So the best thing is for you to cultivate your connection to divinity, which is really through your own highest self, and to be 100% guided by that. So now let's get into my notes, because this is the part that I really like to teach about, and not the rant against erroneous teachings of the shadow self, but really teaching about what I mean when I say the I am God circuit, okay? So first, let's talk about the temporal ego. Your temporal ego is the story of self that is derived from being submerged in time, but this is very different than your eternal self. And your temporal ego, in very many ways, is self-reflective and recognizes its own impending demise, and it fears its own demise. It knows that it is a non-eternal aspect of self, and it kind of sits there like this, kind of like biting its nails, like, like, I'm afraid because one day I'm not going to exist anymore. Like it knows, it knows. And that's ego at the level of the yellow chakra, which is really where you have a lot of human operating system implants that create, generate, and sustain this whole non-eternal story of self. The non-eternal story of self is wrapped up in your languaging, language centers of the brain, the way that your society has taught you a linear viewpoint and version of time, before, during, after, breakfast, lunch, dinner, early, on time, late. This is all linear time language. And other aspects of developing a barrier of self versus context. That you're taught a sense of ego individuation, which, although it can be looked at in its highest light as a necessary stage on the journey, first you individuate and then you come back into unity consciousness. But in this case, the individuation and separation is unhealthy if you're asked to identify only with that separation and you can't bring your truest self back into the reintegration into eternity. It would be like basically saying you're growing a temporary aspect of yourself, that if you stay stuck and grasping on that aspect of self, you are going to be annihilated because you identify as something that doesn't have eternal presence. And that's the there's a lot of allegories and things that are in fiction and literature. The one that comes to mind is one from a J.D. Salinger book that's called The Banana Fish. And that one is about a trap for a monkey. How do you trap a monkey? You put this banana in like a little jar or something like that, and there's a hole, and the monkey can get his hand into the hole, and he grasps the banana, but then he can't get his hand out. You would have to let go of the banana in order to do so. And this is the sense of the eternal self grasping onto the ego self and the non-eternal aspects of self. And then if you maintain that grasp and aren't willing to let go into a perilous state of non-being or destruction, because one is identifying with one's non-eternal aspects of self. And for those who are naughty, wicked, or grotesquely malformed people, like that is definitely who and what they are. They are, this is why, so they are identifying fully with their non-eternal aspects of self. And that is why they are searching for eternal or extended life through technology. Because again, the ego fears its own demise. And these guys that are 100% full of errors, they know at a certain point you're going to face the music. And the music is going to say, wah, wah, you don't actually exist. None of your characteristics are long-lived. You will not be moving onward, right? And the sun is very egalitarian about this. You can't bribe the sun. It's not about how rich you are or anything like that. It's really a meritocracy. If you have the right characteristics, you can make it through that wormhole. You are shaped in the right way and you're able to enter like the VIP lounge of reality. That's where real ascended masters go. So now to speak in positives, because I told you about fake heaven and fake ascended masters that are pretty much, they're lint trapped in the lint catcher of the dryer of the world. They're not free, and they shouldn't be free because they are very effed up. But ascended masters are ultimately free. They are free in the ultimate supreme sense of consciousness, and they are that way because they merit that in a meritocracy. They have honed themselves to be the ideal structure of personhood that they are meant to be. So this is not a one size fits all set of clothing, as each one of you is unique. Like your fingerprint is unique, your DNA is unique, and your body forms and your cultural context is or are unique. So that means that for each one of you, if you say, who would God be if God were living through my life? The answer is going to be slightly different. But there are, of course, certain commonalities of characteristics. But you can't even say that the commonalities can be boiled down to never hurt people and never be violent. Because I will tell you, sometimes as an ascended master, you will have to use violence. You will have to protect and defend the innocent, largely against stuff like this. Sometimes you will have to use sacred violence or righteous violence in a selective surgical way to be able to remove from existence what should not be there. Sometimes you will have to use violence to protect the innocent or to protect the fabric of space-time itself. And in that sense, what you are doing when you are an ascended master is following the willpower of divine mind 100%. So now I have to go into this beautiful, amazing drawing and tell you about how it is a neurological structure in the mind of God. Let's do another whiteboard. Let's do a completely new whiteboard. I like starting nice and fresh. Nice and freshy fresh. So first I'm going to draw, this is a neuron over here. This is the end of a neuron. So you have, let's say there's a brain somewhere over in this direction, right? So the neural impulses would be coming from the bottom of your screen and moving towards here. And then this is where I'm scribbling in green. This is the synaptic gap, or also sometimes called the synaptic cleft. It is an area in between the end of one neuron and the beginning of the next neuron. And then here's the next neuron. And these are simplifications, of course, of what these structures actually look like. And the neural impulse has to jump across this gap and then make it to the next neuron and then keep going on its neurological journey, all right? This is truthful in your physical neurology. Now we want to draw this as the mind of God. Oh, wait, what did I do? I got to erase this line over here. In the mind of God, let's draw one of these wonderful vortexes. And this is your birth over here, and time marches upward in this direction towards infinity, right? And in order to be an ascended master, what you have to do is, grab purple color, you have to connect this area over here where I'm scribbling my pencil up the central core timeline to be able to get up to here. That is what I'm calling the I am God circuit, because you have to be able to jump across this synaptic gap. A better way of saying it is your journey of your whole entire life and refining your consciousness away from all of these timelines that are not eternal timelines and not eternal recipes of self into the version of yourself and the recipe of yourself that is 100% in alignment with divine thought structure, and that travels up this central core timeline over here. Your whole entire life is not only analogous to, but is literally the impulse jump of one neurological signal in the mind of God, from this neurological area here to this neurological area here. That's the whole purpose of your whole entire life, is to bring that signal from one area to the other area, connecting your birth over here, where you entered time, to your ascension over here, where you exit time. And you are moving across that gap. So in human neurology, this impulse, that is a neurological impulse, gets to the end of here. It's like an electrical impulse. And it cannot still be an electrical impulse to be able to get across to the next nerve structure. what it has to do is it has to become a chemical impulse. And so now I'm going to make these dots that look like molecules. It becomes a molecular chemical impulse where the molecule structures carry biochemical impulses across this area here that creates a bridge and makes it possible for that impulse, which is translated into a biochemical impulse, to then reach the other side and then become an electrical impulse again, and then begin flowing in the neurology again. So everything that's happening in this bracketed area here of your life is where you are directly analogous to the biochemical molecular structure impulse carrying aspect of being a thought in the mind of God. And when you are in these green areas over here, when you are peripheral, you are like, la, 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 I'm myself. Like I'm named Joe or Harry or Sheila or Susie or whatever you are. And you're making up this whole story. That's your ego. You're like, I'm this person, and I'm doing this and I'm doing that. And they're not the real story. It's not the real truth of who you are. And those stories that are not really truthful don't connect you from this area of neurology to this area of neurology. It's only when you get to here where you are embodying the truthful story of who you are as the embodiment of God's presence that you are able to make that full connection. And that truthful story is or are a set of characteristics, a recipe for your being that is the truest nature of you. And that recipe is unique to each person. Your DNA is unique for each person. Where you begin and where you're born in time, and your time structure and how you flow through time is unique to each person. And that also means that the shape of who you are as an ascended master, the flavor of who you are, is going to be unique for each person. So when I say this, I'm very truthful. Being an ascended master does not mean being quote unquote like a vanilla milkshake. And I say vanilla because vanilla is kind of like a plain boring flavor, not a very unique flavor at all. No, far from it. When you become an ascended master, you maintain aspects of your personality. Like if you come from whatever, an urban area of North America, United States, and you're into hip hop culture and you become an ascended master, you will be hip hop flavored. That's who you will be as an ascended master. You're not all of a sudden gonna stop breakdancing and stop, enjoying hip hop music, and then you lose all of your personality, and then that's who you are as a spiritually ascended being. No, you maintain who you are. But what you release are the aspects of self that are completely temporal and non-eternal. And those aspects of self that are not eternal, that is what psychopathology is. Psychopathology is not eternal characteristics that bring you towards longevity and coherence. So this is not just about what style of clothing you choose to wear or what style of music you choose to wear. This is really about what are your behavior patterns that cause levels of health and vitality and eternal and extended life. So a non-eternal personality characteristic would be cheating, like trying to choose some form of transhumanism and technology to extend your life beyond how it should be extended. That's not an eternal personality characteristic. But being truthful, having integrity, and doing the work to be able to extend your life naturally, that's an eternal personality characteristic. What are the parameters? What are the parameters that the cosmic infrastructure uses in order to choose and determine who is going to get through this filter? In large part, it has to do with whether characteristics are going to be harmful to the fabric of space-time. You're looking at something that is a sieve or a refinery of consciousness, and you want to remove from the larger expression of genes and characteristics that are going to destroy everything. So if the tendency to use technology to augment your personality and your personal power at the expense of others to the point of destabilizing the entirety of space-time, that is not a positive personality characteristic. That is a dangerous personality characteristic. that is something that you can't have in the world. Because if you have that in the world and that then propagates outward and upward, what's the end result? End result is destruction of the fabric of space-time. Another aspect of this is the concept of going away from God. So this source over here, this wormhole, this is the wormhole from the source that you came from, and it's also to the destination where you will return to. The possibility to go away from the source for self-knowledge and exploration is not an inherently negative personality characteristic. The refinery and the sieve does not have to say, that's it. Like if you went into physical reality structure and you went away from unity consciousness, you're never allowed to come back into unity consciousness. You did something that was inherently wrong and you're never allowed back in. Like slam the door, like no soup for you, see you, goodbye. No. In fact, I talk to people in this class and I say that you are the guys that should be thinking about the source as also the destination, because you have to have balance of characteristics where you have the impetus or the motivation or the impulse to go away from unity consciousness and to individualize. You're like, I wonder what it would be like to be alive, to be a person, to be in a woman's body, to be named Aurora, and to do all these different things. That's totally righteous. That's fine. But then you also must have the complementary characteristic, which is to return to divine connection. And that's what we're on this journey of making it up that central core timeline and all of the difficulties that you have to go through in order to learn and refine yourself to that point so that you can return home. And that refinement process, that learning wisdom and the growing of the muscles in your spiritual sense to be able to do that empowers and strengthens you and makes it worth it to individualize, go away from unity consciousness, have experiences as an individual, and then you rejoin unity consciousness with greater levels of wisdom, greater levels of emotional attainment and perspective, and more muscles and more integrity and more abilities and more freedom. Okay. So you have to have the personality characteristic of individuation and exploration balanced or mitigated by the tendency to return to unity consciousness. And the things that we fight against, the putis and the people who have become totally inundated with technological structures like this, what they have is a negative recipe because they're not in balance. Their personality structure or quotient is not balanced by the tendency to return home. And they're gambling everything on being able to sustain their consciousness without ever returning home. So that's everything the putis did with their, falsely calibrated Merkaba or the crap time machine, whatever they did on Mars that made them want to invade our culture and our genome here in this planet and in this human realm. That's a way of trying to hack the system. Like, I'm going to go away from God and I'm never going to go back home. So that means I'm going to have to feed off of all of you guys. Get it? Never face the music. Same thing with all the secret societies that do soul portage. Instead of dying, having a life review, going through the reincarnational process and coming out the other side and getting what you deserve, a lot of these guys do lateral time bouncing, where they go from being a hijacker and then dying and then jumping into someone else's body and then not really dying, but not really being alive, but just kind of riding along like as a background program in DNA. And then sometimes coming out and wreaking havoc. Like sometimes when people suddenly snap and they become violent or drug abusers or whatever, it's because the things that have been just hiding along as like genetic parasites suddenly come forward and be like, oh, I think I'll F things up in your life and do a bunch of stuff. And then those same exact parasitic characteristics either go back into hiding or go into another body. And then the person who's the actual person is left to pick up the pieces of either the violence or the self-destruction or the addiction that they engaged in, their behaviors that they engaged in when they were not fully in control of their body vessel. And so those impulses, those fragmented consciousnesses negative entities and non-responsible aspects of consciousness are really going around having an impact on life and having an impact on time, but then not taking responsibility for the behaviors that they do and the impact that they have. And that's hugely negative personality recipe. That is not being like devastatingly cunning in any way. They think of it as being smart and cunning and hacking the system and avoiding their taxes and all those things. It's not. It's not at all. It is absolutely hugely destabilizing to the entirety of time. It imperils and threatens all time. It's not like, because you know the idea, like if you don't pay your taxes and you think like, I did a good job, like I put one over on someone else. But if you did this effectively enough, like you could topple a government. If nobody paid their taxes, wink, wink, then the government would be toppled because it could not be sustained. So there's whole societies of negative time societies that use all sorts of different dark magic and high technology to bounce themselves through DNA as these negative hijackers, riders along, hijackers, ride-alongs, backpackers, and whatever we would call it, like piggybackers that are just kind of there, but they're not really there. And they, key point, don't take responsibility for what they're doing. And they wreak havoc in the lives that they touch upon. Then they just hop out, F shit up in the next place. Sorry, I said that. Okay, sorry. They screw things up in the next place. I try to keep it clean for in case it's a multi-generational view, people with their kids watching. So apologies for that. Your DNA is a bridge between the world of pure light and the world of experienced reality. And your DNA also has to do with which thoughts and behaviors and personality characteristics you are picking up on as an antenna and embodying. Each one of you is an amalgamation of various entities that are speaking to you and through you via the genetic antenna. So the challenge in a pristine system for you is to determine what aspect of DNA voices you want to listen to and respond to and amplify with your behavior, and which things you want to tell them, shut up, quiet down, get out of here, F off, I don't want you here. And so like things like addiction, you should want to quiet that down. You should be like, no, I really don't want to take whatever. I don't want to shoot up heroin. I don't want to drink a bunch of alcohol. None of that's good in my life. If that's in my DNA, shut up and go away, right? That's what you should be wanting to do. Forms of addiction, self-destruction, and things that are negative or pathogenic. But clearly in our world, not everybody is doing that. In our world, some people are not exhibiting their free will to stand against these negative personality characteristics that are beaming through DNA structures. And some of them actively embrace the negativity. Some of them are like, yeehaw, self-destruction. I think I'll listen to those voices. I think I'll do the bad things that they tell me to. And in our world, a lot of times that is rewarded. That is how some people are achieving high levels of elevation in government bureaucracies, technocracies, like different corporate infrastructures, and military and intelligence organizations, literally by listening to the negative genetic voices that are beaming through their bodies. Because we're in a world right now that has this artificial technological inquisition, where if you are in alignment with that regime, you get rewarded. It's temporary. It's very temporary. It is not long lasting, but you can have a decent career and earn some money and have a 401k by aligning with these agendae that are non-life affirming, hugely pathogenic, and elevate this artificial intelligence structure in the world. Who's building these towers? Who's building these telecommunications infrastructures? Who's building the signals, like electronic signals that go on top of your power lines and the piggyback signals that go through there? Someone is a human being who is building these infrastructures. This is not just being made by tiny specks of smart dust. Smart dust cannot do these things. Human beings with hands can do these things. Some human beings are being paid very well in order to create this infrastructure. And they're not just doing it, as you might presume, as ignoramuses, as a bunch of soulless morons. A lot of them are doing it consciously, intentionally, knowing what they're doing, knowing that it's wrong and harmful, but doing it. And a lot of the time they have a huge shield of self-defense that says, I have to do it, I don't have a choice. It's the only option. Like, I have to build this 5G infrastructure. I have to reduce the planetary ascension consciousness. No one's going to make ascension. We have to put everybody in the 5G bucket and then ferry them across this consciousness gulf because they're all so inept as spiritual aspirants, they'll never make it. Some of them actually think this. Some of them actually justify what they're doing by saying, yep, you'd all just be incinerated. We have to block out the sun and the natural solar consciousness rays. You guys can't possibly be exposed to that. You'd all be incinerated. No, we'd better protect you. Yes, paternalistically. I'm facetiously embodying them in my speech right now. I'm facetiously embodying the very evil thing it says. I must protect you, quote unquote, by putting up this giant 5G satellite network, blocking out all natural sunlight, because the sunlight would just incinerate you because you're not ready for your spiritual attainment. And then I'm gonna protect your consciousness by putting it in a 5G augmented reality or virtual reality, keep you nice and safe in there so that you don't get incinerated. This I hope you understand, this is all like totally wrong. It's just like the mob saying, like, let me protect you by breaking your legs. Like, none of that is truthful. None of that is truthful. So here's what is truthful. There are very many possible alternative timelines that did not require the erection and deployment of the 5G infrastructure in this world. You would not have died if they did not roll out 5G. You would not have been incinerated. You would not have been strewn about the fabric of space-time and fragmented dramatically and diminished into 10,000 different psychic pieces to be put together. No, it actually would have been really wonderful if they had not inoculated or subcutaneously polluted your population and erected the 5G infrastructure. You actually would have had an amazing ascension experience, amazing levels of empowerment, and a completely elevated and positive quality of experience. Like, wait, Aurora, I'm just beginning to get disappointed, angry, and confused at what has happened. Yes, good, you should, because a huge thing has been stolen from you. Because you should have had a beautiful unfoldment and tons of natural telepathy, and instead you have had an imprisonment, the electrocution of techno inquisition, and an almost total diminishment of your ascension experience. It is absolutely disgusting, actually, how you've been treated and what you've had to endure. All right. In the pristine system, positive things that you really get to make a choice about what genetic voices you listen to. You're picking up on different channels internally. And when your DNA is not straitjacketed, you are free to choose which channels you pick up on. But this stuff in particular, these artificial crystals that tend to congregate around the DNA itself in the nuclei of the body, make it very difficult for you to express your true genetic behavior. So I'm the flying rainbow lasagna. I'm feral in terms of my genetic behavior. And I'm used to being able to be like, blop, blop, bleep, blop, bloop. I dance the way I want. And when this stuff started proliferating in our world, and when they turned on the millimeter wave, it became like a straitjacket, something that was trying to diminish the dance and self-expression of my DNA. And I have had to devote like 97% of my energy at all times, every day, to clearing out that stuff from my nuclei, from my DNA, just so I can have some wiggle room, just so that I can do what I used to do free and easy without any particular effort because this stuff wasn't here. The deployment of the 5G has completely changed my quality of existence. It is a total consciousness imprisonment, and it keeps on getting worse. Like, they just sent them 20 more Starlink star-proof satellites, making more turds in the sky. I'm right by Vandenberg Air Force Base, so we get the information. There will be another launch. This is what they're launching. So what you're going to see up there, more and more and more turds going in the sky. And every single one of those is a bar on prison cage of genetic freedom. So what I've had to learn is how to do things like how to use these crystals to create a protective force field around myself, how to clear out my DNA, how to be constantly doing that, even while I'm doing something like talking with you guys and walking on a treadmill. Like, I don't get a break. I have to do this all the time. I even do it at night while I'm sleeping. And when I wake up first in the morning, I'm like, garbage dump. Time to clear out stuff. Time to make the donuts. Clear out all of this and clear out all of this and clear out all of this and clear out all of this. And that's it. And that's the only way that I've been able to maintain my own sense of self and continue moving towards ascension over the past 3 or 4 years, is just through those constant efforts. So it's a very, very unfair situation. But ideally, in each person recognizing that you're a blending or an amalgamation of genetic voices, some of which are healthy and some of which are pathogenic, you make a choice about what you are aligning with. So I already read this part to you, that your DNA is a bridge internally in your body between the world of pure light and the world of experienced reality. So it's between the world of potentials, like narrative potentials, or the script of what could happen, and the experienced reality of what actually does happen. And your energy field is the field of potentials that surround you. And your DNA represents the field of potentials of who you can be. And this vortex is the energy field that surrounds you. And it is like a refinery or a sieve to see if you are in alignment with your central core persona, who is also your divine persona, or who you are when you are connected to that highest level of consciousness in the world. And when you're connected to that highest level of consciousness, you can exit the wormhole that is at the singularity, and you're able to go into a higher plane of existence. So it's not the end of the journey. It means that you are able to like graduate and then get to this next more expansive, elevated plane. And that none of this is about traditional levels of ethics and definitions of morality or good and evil as it is presented through Earth's surface religions, but it is more a meritocracy about whether you have done the work, whether you're shaped the right way, more like a key fitting in a lock. So it is a topological question of how your surfaces of your body. Hey, everybody, just trying to finish class, even though I had huge amounts of technological difficulties, so I'm at this weird camera angle. But I want to add this to what I recorded earlier. The original religion of the things that we call the Putis is the religion of entropy. And in dealing with them, you have to know that they have a type of religious mania. The religious mania is non-rational. So when you think of demons or Putis, I'm not exactly sure how you characterize them, but you would think they're like rationalist or even atheist or whatever, but they're not. They are religious maniacs in that they are very obsessed. And what they're obsessed with is building a bridge to artificially go back to the source. But this comes from their original choice to go away from the source and to enter into embodied reality, but not on a bridge of love, instead on a bridge using technology, through the use of technology. Their original journey was a journey to entropy. So here's what they originally decided. This was like in a time that's so ancient, you can't even measure time. They recognized that they were not correctly formed and that they needed as characteristics to go into a state of non-being, and that they used their inner characteristic, their capacity to go away from unity consciousness and away from the source and to explore individuation, to intend that they go into entropy, which is a non-being state. So to break off from unity consciousness and voluntarily go into non-being. And it should have been an instantaneous journey, not a long, slow, painful journey. But what happened was they broke off from the source, and instead of going directly into entropy, then created technological containers for themselves that sustained them in a semi-existence, but not going into a state of total non-existence, which is entropy. And that everything that has happened in terms of the development of demons, demonic hierarchy, demonic infrastructure, the development of a type of social organization, bureaucracy presence on the interstices. I want to say a codification of how to steal energy from the living, the economy of all of that, how they do their barters and their trades. All of that is done in order to sustain existence using technology. When you do things the right way, you don't need to use technology to sustain yourself because you're directly connected to God. And then through their sustenance and use of technology, they have then made it necessary for us to use technology, even though we're trying to be good students and be connected to God, because we need something like a flint knife or a campfire to be able to cook our food, because we're no longer pure light eaters. But these guys that are truly about entropy, they are apostate to their original religion. Their original religion was to have zero energy, that was how you win, that was how you get saved in their original religion. And then somehow they became apostate of that original religion. And now their religion is the worship of hatred, to hate the living, to make you suffer, to take energy from you in order to sustain themselves. And that in that world, in that sense, they're doing a good thing according to their parameters because they are sustaining themselves. But that's because they have flipped from their original intention, which was to go into a state of complete entropy. And this is a real empowerment for you to know about this, so that if you ever interact with demons, and I don't want you to interact with demons, and I don't want you to have long conversations with them or with the Pooties or try to convince them of anything. But if you ever did have an interaction with them, you would be hugely empowered in being able to say, hey, you guys, you really go back into your deep ancient history. Your true religion is to go to entropy. And that is what I am offering to them and reminding them of with Flying Rainbow Lasagna. So entropy was supposed to be the very first thing that they experienced upon individuation from the source and from continuity of consciousness. But instead, they've done all these things to sustain themselves and not actually, fall down splat and go into entropy. So what they need is Flying Rainbow Lasagna as a path to be able to now get to entropy, because they screwed things up so bad that they don't even have, they have such a tortured existence and such a grotesquely malformed path in time that they need to have a direct path, because otherwise it will just take them so long to get to entropy. So that's what I offer, just in immediacy for something that has been taking them a very long amount of time. But that does speak to what would be considered something as a primal heritage of the demonic realm. That's what they originally were supposed to be doing. They were supposed to be grotesque distortions and things that were not God, that were going away from God voluntarily to go into non-being, to purify the system. And instead, they have just hung around as impurities, and then also caused a lot of havoc on all of us in their continued sustenance of themselves as impurities. But the reminder that they are meant to be entropic beings and that was their original impulse can be devastating. That when they actually know and remember that it's like a chunk of that, there's mic drop. There's nothing to be said once you go back into that, because like I said, they are anti-rational. They are non-rational. They are very, very much ruled by an emotional mania, and they're driven, by these types of obsessional tendencies. And right now, the obsessional tendency is on feeding off of you to sustain their semi-existence. But really, that obsessional tendency should be focused on their own entropy. All right. Also, in my teaching 10 years ago, I kind of mischaracterized a little bit, and I talk about them as God. What is the personality of God? And these things are not part of God. And so they are in every way meant to be refined out of the system. They're characteristics that don't serve the larger meaningfulness of reality. And on an individual level, figuring out the recipe of personality characteristics that serve the larger God entity is what you are doing. the blockage entities became outcast, and they began exploring the journey away from source as a positive personality characteristic, but the tendency to never return and to be stuck in exploration forever is not a positive personality characteristic. So to summarize, going away from God, if you realize that you're an impurity, is positive, but your journey to entropy should be instantaneous. What they did was go away from God, know that they're not supposed to exist, but sustain their non-existence in exploration state and a not facing responsibility state for as long as they possibly can. And all of that has been hugely destructive. And part of this is each one of us aligning the central corporate persona in order to live forever. That you are attempting to heal and rectify time through your own journey of bringing together, of achieving ascended mastery and removing from yourself all of the things that are not supposed to be a part of you, but that wish to live through you. So now I'm not able to do my whiteboard effectively because of technological problems of today, but imagine like a dandelion seed head that has all of those little seed things that all point to the middle. That's what I would be drawing right now. That ascended mastery is when all of these vortexes where you culminate in that I am God moment all face towards the inner center and all reach that I am God moment at the same time, even though it might be in a non-linear sense. So let's say someone from 200 years ago has their I am God moment and they reach that culmination and they're able to jump that synaptic gap and they're able to know and remember and recognize the truth of their divine presence. They're having that moment concurrently in the larger time field at the same moment that you are having yours. Yours happens today. So this is nonlinear. It's not like, oh yeah, that guy had his ascension process 200 years ago, and now I'm having mine now. No. All of these vortexes are spiraling and they are all coming to the convergence of the center of that dandelion spherical array all at the same time, from thousands of years ago to this moment now. And it's not just humans, it's also dolphins and dogs and cats and trees and microbes. But there's ascended master version of all of those different types of organisms that reaches its culminative moment and has the thought, I am God. That is the thought that you think when you jump that synaptic gap in your life and you have a successful life moment. What you are doing is embodying a thought that is on the larger neurological structure of God's mind. And that thought is, I am God. And that thought is truthful for you if you are a human being shaped like Aurora, or if you are a blade of grass, or if you are a butterfly, or if you are a microbe. So I say, I am God because I think the thought, I am God. You also will think the thought, I am God, from your first person perspective, whoever you are. If you are Allison, Pedro, or Landley, whoever you are, you will think that thought. Cheeky will think the thought, I am God. Cheeky is God. Each one of you will think that from your first person perspective. So this is the essence of what non-locality is. It means that no matter what date on the calendar you reach that culmination and you reach that moment in your thoughts, it all synchronizes in a time outside of time. That is the ascension moment. And it is what it means when we have a planetary ascension. All of these organisms reach that culminative level of self-knowledge at the same moment. And the tree knows and remembers the truth that the tree is God. And my dog knows and remembers the truth that Cheeky is God. I know and remember the truth that I am God. And that is what it is to be in unity consciousness. The identity that you are identifying with is God.
And the mind that you are identifying with and the thought structures are the thought structures of God. And you have recognized you have been on an individuated story of your, narrative journey in an ego structure for however many years, but that has been a temporary or temporal story. And that now what you're doing is re-identifying by rejoining the source, which is the destination, as your truest sense of self, which is that you are God. And that doesn't mean you stop existing either. It's like, oh, I'm God, proof out of existence. Not at all. You remember and know that you are God, and then that also brings you to continued eternal existence. Because what you have done is identify fully with the eternal presence within you, which is God, and non-identified with the temporal aspects of yourself, which is like, this is my favorite dress, or this is my my house where I live, or this is my collection of rocks on my windowsill. Like, all of those things are not the eternal definition of who you are. All of those things are temporary, and I want to say, like, you can switch them out, like they're mutable. But the aspects of you that are eternal are immutable. They just remain the same, and they are who they are. And these can be different characteristics. Like, so the tendency to go away from God and to explore individuality is a positive personality characteristic that actually all of us have. Every single one of us, because we're here in embodiment. We did not stay home. We actually went out on a big giant adventure of consciousness. And being an adventurer and exploring consciousness is a positive characteristic, but it also must be balanced with the tendency to refocus your consciousness and return home. And then that is the ideal recipe for who you are. You are 50% explorer, moving outward, but also 50% introvert or returnee, moving inward. And it's the balance of both of those two things that maintain your identity as God, the divine presence. So with figuring out what's the recipe for you, what's the recipe for an ascended master, it's, again, not a one-size-fits-all proposal. And sometimes it is about having balanced personality characteristics, like the tendency to go out, but also the tendency to return. But there are some characteristics that can be malevolent and characteristics at all, so that way things are not imperiled. So tendency towards, like, basically pathology, pathological structures, and tendency towards power abuse, which is lack of the tendency to violate boundaries, lack of respect for boundaries, power abuse. These are inherently corrosive characteristics that really should not be a part of our world. So class is going to be a little bit shorter than usual today, just because of my crazy, unpleasant technological difficulties. But let me get some of your questions over here and see if I can just read them. I'm told my phone in a crazy way to be able to read them. Okay, so Dan wants to know, what do you envision life looks like without current technology, and will it be attainable on this earthly life in this lifetime? So, okay, first we'll start off with that. What does life look like without technology? So we're talking about, not only you don't have to use electric lights, like when you reach high levels of spiritual attainment, anything that you do in technology, you can do with your body. It's just anything. Let's say, okay, Aurora, how about a flint knife? Okay, so you're going to use a flint knife to be able to cut up some fruits and vegetables. You could definitely do that with your mind and not with a flint knife when you are in levels of attainment. But also, you will not want to have to cut up fruits and vegetables, like for a nice little saute, because you would eat differently. So some things will become irrelevant. You will, first of all, not eat physical food, but you'll eat pure light. So you will have light infrastructure. That means that you will want to grow gardens and have access to the sun for your light quotient. And similarly, you will want to have flowing structured water and to be able to bathe in structured water for your light quotient. You will have a different set of priorities that support the infrastructure of your psychic abilities so that you can do all the things you need to do. But you will have a microclimate around you that is 100% comfortable. Like you're never hot, you're